So, what I decided to do, I'm gonna come up with my own games. Okay, I got Forges of Empire. Since I'm doing a movie about how I think evolution, we got completely ass backwards, pretty much. Like, there's an old saying: just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Okay, I think Neanderthals actually knew how to make steel because if you think about it, it's not that hard. You know, all you gotta do is like basically. I mean, I know we've added it to make different kinds of steel, but if you want to make basic steel that is still going to be better than rock as far as you want to make a spear out of it. Basically, you take iron ore. That's how steel I think was accidentally invented. Someone threw a chunk of iron ore in fire and let it burn, and it melted flat, and then it froze because it was ice age. It froze into steel. Okay, basically, how common steel is made, or iron, from iron ore that's melted into flat. It's liquid, a flat liquid, and it cools or freezes into steel, right? And Neanderthals had those two things back then. They had fire, they knew how to make a fire, and they had plenty of ice. They had plenty of ice, and they probably went to, at the time they probably were going into caves, and they're probably finding iron ore everywhere. Because back then it was more plentiful because we weren't taking out a mass quantity to make steel back then. So there's probably iron ore laying all over the ground back then, or in caves, like right at the entrance, by all around. And they probably used to, maybe they probably used to burn iron ore. It was probably like wood to them. They probably thought it was wood. They probably couldn't tell the difference. They probably threw their own chunk of, and they were making steel back then. The Neanderthals, they were making steel weapons. They were making steel hatchets. You know, and it's like and then the stupid archaeologists, they really are stupid. They really are idiots in the real rational world. I mean, you go back to their conclusions, and no, I mean, they're so idiotic, in their Democrats, because it's like only most of archaeology is general statements, making general statements that the world doesn't run on general statements. It never did, never will. It doesn't run on general statements. Okay, it doesn't run on everything being made in the factory. And the way archaeologists actually describe how the past was, it's like it was made in a freaking factory. You know, it was like all the Neanderthals were 5'5", between 5'7". When in actuality they came just like us in all freaking sizes, just like all species of mammal come in all different sizes. You got mutant sizes, you got runt sizes. It was back then the way it is now. The way I see it. So what I'm going to do is the forges. This Forges of Empire. Where you build your. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it the other way, the real way. I'm going to do it. I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to reverse it where. No, we went back to the past to go to the future. And so I'm going to reverse that. I'm going to actually not reverse it, but I used to be in land development. I spent 10 years. I know how it really works. So I'm gonna put what I know now back then, and I guarantee you, man, a lot of the stuff we do now they could have done back then, but they thought better of it. They thought better of it. It would have ruined the environment. Maybe they didn't want to go into the steel business back in the Neanderthal days because they maybe when they were making the metal back then they had to make it outside because they didn't have buildings yet. What the hell? Because they really didn't have buildings yet, so they were making the steel outside or where all the water was, their drinking water, and they at the time they probably didn't realize that the metallurgy was ending up in the water, poisoning the water. Maybe they didn't know that back then, and a lot of the Neanderthals probably died because they were poisoning their own water by making metal back then, and that's why a lot of Neanderthals got wiped out. You know, because they didn't know any better. They weren't, they really didn't have doctors or anything, whatever back then, and they didn't realize that the metal that they were making was poisoning their own drinking water back then. You know, and they figured it out after a while, and they probably stopped making the metal because of it. The Neanderthals, and then the Cro-Magnon men found out on their own how to make it as well, because the Cro-Magnon men were probably doing the same thing later on. They were probably trying to burn the iron ore and it turned to metal, and the Cro-Magnon men were more about the metal, because they were more warlike people and they wanted better weapons to backstab the Neanderthals with. So I'm thinking, That's what, my Neanderthal movie. I'm gonna put that in there too, where the Neanderthals were making metal. And like I said, I'm having my Neanderthals. They're all different sizes, just like we are. They were 7 foot Neanderthals. There were 6'5" Neanderthals. There were 5 foot Neanderthals. You know, I might make them when they're a little hairier than us. I'm gonna say like they're kind of like kind of like a big the Bigfoot creatures are like Neanderthals. If there is such thing as these Bigfoot creatures, they're the last of the Neanderthals. That's what I'm gonna say. That's how big. I actually think they averagely were way bigger than us Neanderthals. They were more like the Bigfoots that they claim to see. If they are seeing them, those are the Neanderthals that haven't gone extinct yet. Bigfoot, you know, because you would have had to been that big back then to go against the predators back then. You would have had to been that big without having to use guns. You'd had to been bigger and stronger to take on the predators back then without guns. That's the way I look at it. But anyway, so I'm gonna do that, and I'm having another game I always want to make. I'm gonna call it Homo, and it's gonna be like evolution. It's I will talk about that later. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. What the fuck is